So we're here today at the awesome Glebe fishery near Leicester. Today we're doing a spot of shallow fishing on the pole. A tactic that really comes into its own in the summer months. Counts for loads of weights. One of my favourite ways of fishing. So hopefully we'll run through a few tips and the rigs and bait that I'm using, and hopefully we'll carry on catching a few fish like this immaculate fish. So let's put this one back and then we'll get straight into the rigs I'm using. It's mental, isn't it? Big uns know exactly where the snags are. The only pellet in my peg is my hook bait, but I'm still making plenty of noise and drawing fish into the peg. When you're catching fully scaled ghost carp like that, what more could you want in a fish? And what you tend to find is fish like that are normally bigger fish. So today's really simple, kept it really simple with 3 rigs. Elastic choice, 13 hollow. We're catching decent sized fish, so that's sort of my go-to carp elastic. Elastic I've used for years and years. I've got a long kit because we might be catching the odd bigger fish, and I want that extra length in the top kit in case they do charge off. It gives me a little bit more cushion than it does when you're using a short kit instead. So 13 hollow through all 3 kits. This is my sort of shallowest rig, if you like. I've got a 4x10 Carp shallow, and with this one I've only got sort of maybe 2 foot of line above the float between the pole tip and the float. That just means that I can control the rig quite easily with this rig. The only downside with this, on a lot of fisheries, they can spook away from the pole tip, so that's when my rigs alter. I've got 3 different line lengths above the pole float. I've got a shorter rig with only 2 foot of line that I can flick around. You're allowed to slap your rig over the pole here now, so that's something I can do with this shorter rig with the shorter line above the float, and I can control my rig nice and easy. But if they do become a bit spooky, then I've got another rig, slightly heavier float. It's a 4x12 Carp shallow. Again, with all the rigs, shots just below the float with no shot down the line. So we're carp fishing today. With carp, they sort of differ from F1s, if you like, where it's important to get that slow fall and no shot down the line. You don't tend to miss many bites when you're carp fishing unless you're fishing the wrong depth, and that's when you can just simply move the float up and down. So if I'm missing a few bites at say 18 inch, which is normally a good starting point, I might shallow it up to say 15 inch and then maybe 12 again if I'm still missing bites. Likewise, if I'm struggling with the line above the pole tip, the pole float, I can switch to a shorter rig. It just lets me control the rig a little bit better, and if I do get a bite, there's sort of less slack line and I'm able to hit more bites. So it's a bit of trial and error. Throughout the session I'll probably swap between the rigs. Ideally I'd want to catch on the shortest rig, but I might have to step it up and flick the rig beyond the pole tip with a rig like this, or my longest rig, which is almost the length of the whole top kit. So I'm swinging the pole rig right out beyond my feed, or maybe there's a few bigger fish cruising at the back of my feed. I can target them with this rig, and it's a 4x14 mugger float, so it's a slightly heavier float, stubby little float like that. Again, all the shot is just below the float, and then I can alter the depth depending on how sort of shallow they're feeding. Again, if I'm missing bites at 18 inches, I can shallow it up. This is only sort of a shallow lake, typical of a lot of commercial fisheries. So my starting point would probably be about 18 inches, but on deeper venues, you know, maybe like Larford or Hayfield, sort of 3 or 4 foot might be a better depth, because you know you've got 10 foot of water there. The fish can be anywhere, but a lot of it's trial and error. So on a shallower lake like this, sort of 1 foot to 2 foot is sort of the go-to when you're shallow fishing. Hook choices, because we're going to be fishing pellets today, which I'll come on to in a bit. I'm fishing a 015 power line hook length, and I've got a size 16 KKH hook, and I've got a band on a hair there, so I can just band a hard pellet. Obviously with hard pellets it's nice and durable, nice durable hook bait that you're not going to sort of lose or strike off. You catch loads of fish, potentially, you know, a dozen fish on the same pellet if we're really catching. So there are 3 rigs, really simple. That leads me on to bait choice. So bait, really simple. All I've got here is a tub of 6mm hard pellets. Obviously with hard pellets on a commercial fishery, it's what the fish are used to seeing. It's what they're switched on to feeding on, if you like. And I know this venue responds really well to 6mm pellets. Obviously it differs around the country. I mean, a lot of venues, the anglers feed 4mm, so I think the fish get used to feeding on 4mm. Likewise, you might feed 8mm on the pole. A lot of southwest venues, we tend to feed bigger pellets, and when you sort of move up north, it goes to smaller pellets for some reason. But it's more about what the anglers are feeding. I think they sort of switch on to a certain size of pellet. So 6mm are my go-to to begin with. Obviously, trial and error again. You can drop down to 4mm if you think they're a bit cagey, or if you want to make a bit more noise, then you can feed 8mm. But that's the feed choice, really simple, nice durable catapult as well. And then I've got a few hook bait options. I can use one of those on the hook, same as I'm feeding, sort of match the hatch, or I've got a few different hook bait choices, a few different coloured pellets, and maybe even like a red wafter. Sometimes certain colours can work really well, red, pink, particularly in coloured water. I guess they just stand out more. I've found when it's really chocolatey and brown, sometimes a pink or a red can be more effective than a plain old brown pellet. So it's worth playing around, seeing what's better on the day. And without further ado, I think we'll get fishing. Okay, so we've been feeding the peg for a little while. Obviously when you're fishing shallow, it can take a little while to get the fish competing and up actively looking for the bait. A lot of the time it's about competition, so feeding little and often, just keep that sort of column of bait falling through the water. It doesn't have to be loads and loads of bait. Sort of on some days, sort of 2 or 3 pellets can be enough. It's all about sort of seeing how the fish react, how much bait sort of you need to get those fish into your peg, but at the same time you don't want loads of bait in your peg because that makes them harder to catch. So it's all about trying to figure out how often to feed and how much to feed, and there's no real sort of set answer. It's all about trying and seeing how the fish react on the day. So I've had a little while I've been feeding the peg, and that's quite important before you ship out sometimes to get the fish confident. So I've got a shorter lash of line between my tip and my pole float. All I'm going to do is just flick the rig to the side in amongst that feed. We've been feeding it a while, so hopefully I'll get a fish straight away. So I've not had a bite then, but I'm not going to leave the rig there. I'm going to keep laying the rig through and letting that hook bait drop through, because that's what's natural to the fish. I'm not just going to hang that rig up in the water and loose feed over the top, because a static bait's not very natural. Might be a few silverfish then. I was getting a few little bites. I'm going to feed the swim, 4 or 5 pellets, lay my rig over the top. And what I can do, so obviously if I've not had a bite there, I can try slapping the rig over the pole tip a few times just to make a bit of a noise. The thing with that is, the only pellet in my peg is my hook bait, but I'm still making plenty of noise and drawing fish into the peg. The sun's actually come out then, and I had the shadow of my pole tip where I was fishing, so I'm going to start slapping the other way. So I've got the sun shining from the left, shadows on the right. There's the bite. So I'm going to flick the rig over to the left. That way the shadow of my pole's not going to spook the fish. Keep laying the rig in. I'm not going to keep a static hook bait there. I think they're silverfish. I might actually have to maybe try shallowing up because there are the odd fish in my peg. There we go, that's a carp. Nice ghosty that one. See, I've hooked the fish and I've fed straight away, and I'm still feeding the peg, because what I want is to land this fish and have the fish still competing in my peg, ready for my next fish. And that's quite important when you're shallow fishing, just to keep the sort of the peg going and the fish competing, ready for your next fish. Lovely ghost carp, that one. So I'm not rushing it. Gone back to a top kit, and what I'm going to do, top kit between my legs, I'm going to feed again. Obviously, if you're not comfortable pole fishing, then I'd suggest concentrating on getting the fish in rather than feeding. But if you can feed while you're playing a fish, it's great, because it's more likely that, you know, you're going to catch one quicker the next time. I'm using a pull bung this time, keeping my pole tip low, nice and low until it gets close to me, and then I'll raise it and hopefully we'll be able to net it. There he goes. Lovely pretty fish, that one. Nice ghost carp. Lovely yellowy fish. Beautiful. Right, let's put this one back. First thing I'm going to do, of course, is feed the peg. I'm going to feed it a few times with sort of 5 or 6 pellets. 6mm pellets, making plenty of noise. So I've got a 6mm on the hook then. It took me a little while to get a bite, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to an 8mm this time. Let's try an 8mm red pellet. That way my hook bait is obviously going to make a lot more noise than my loose feed, and might get us a quicker bite. So I'm going to feed again just before I ship out. Make sure my pole tip's over to the right so it's not spooking the fish from the shadow of the pole. And flick it over the top. Make a nice plop on the water. Hopefully we'll get a really quick bite because we've been feeding the peg. So I've opted to just fish 13 metres today. Nice comfortable distance, but it's a reasonable distance that it's sort of far enough away from me that the fish aren't going to spook and they're still going to feed confidently. You can see the odd fish out there mooching around. It's all about keeping that rig on the move, keeping that pellet dropping through the water. You can see the odd fish cruising around as well, and that's when I'd probably pick up a rig with a longer length of line above the float. It just allows me to flick it towards cruising fish. See, I'm looking for signs, swirls on the water. You can see the odd shallow out there, odd fish cruising around. Important to keep the feed going in. Keep laying the rig in. There we go, there's one. Luckily it's shot out of the peg, so it's not going to spook the others, and I can carry on feeding the peg. Going to take my time again with this one. Looking like it's going to be a nice session today. Plenty of fish mooching around. Another ghosty, that one. It's gone slightly colder lately, but luckily these fish are up in the water and competing still. Another ghosty, that one. Lovely colour on his head. Look at that one. That's beautiful. Wouldn't mind him in my pond at home. Put that one back. So I've actually missed a couple bites before I hook that one. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to shallow the rig up slightly. So I was fishing about 18 inches. I'm just going to slide it down to about 15 inches. Hopefully we'll hit a few more bites. And there we go. 15 inches this time. See if that improves our catch rate. I'm going to try an 8mm pellet again. Get the fish competing again before I go out there. Feed a couple times, see how the fish respond. The odd swell there straight away, so hopefully there's one or two waiting for us. I'm going to slap the rig straight over the top of that feed, just the once. Makes plenty of noise on the water. Let that pellet drop through. No bites this time. Just going to try slapping a couple times this time, make a bit more noise. There we go, that one worked. Keep the feed going in again. Catching really fast now. I think because we've been loose feeding for a little while and getting the fish there and competing, they're really actively feeding now. And this is when you can catch loads of fish and get a big weight. Another ghosty, this one. So I'm not rushing them. Quite nice sized fish, I don't need to rush. This one's coming straight in nicely. There we go. Beautiful fish. Yellowy ghosty. Put that one back. I'll try 6mm this time. So I've just got a size 16 KK8 hook, an 0.15 hook length, sort of a nice go-to size when you're catching carp on commercials. Obviously if I was on a big venue catching big double figure fish, I might step it up to a 14 hook and maybe 0.17. But 0.15 is a nice sort of hook length material for commercials like this. What you can also do, like I said before, is swing the rig out beyond the pole tip, like a pendulum motion. Sometimes the odd bigger fish out there cruising. I can see the odd one there. See if he has it. Yeah, so I'll flick that straight in front of the fish. It's just hanging beyond the loose feed. And what you tend to find is fish like that are normally bigger fish. There's a sort of bigger, older, wiser ones that sort of don't come right in amongst the loose feed, but they know if they sort of lurk around, they can get a free meal. Just trying to snag me that one. Bit of side strain on it. A bit of a snag over there, but 13 Olo's doing alright at the minute. If we do get a few problems, I'll step it up to a 15, but there's the odd smaller fish in this pond, so don't want to go too heavy, but obviously we've hooked a bigger fish this time, so just going to take our time with it. Ooh. Keep the pole tip nice and low. Should start coming towards us soon. Ooh, he's gone right in that weed there. Definitely a bigger fish, this one. Right, it seems to have come out with peg. Now it's under control. I can maybe loose feed my peg again and get ready for the next one. A few pellets out there. Starting to come in now. Top kit nice and low, use that side puller nice and slowly, bring the fish towards us. The sun's starting to come out now, so there will be the odd bigger fish cruising around. And that's when you can sort of start targeting the sort of fish that are cruising around as well as the fish in your loose feed. Slightly bigger fish, this one. There we go. Yeah, nice chunky fish, that one. Definitely one of the older fish, and he was hanging beyond the feed a little bit. He's obviously been caught a few times, he knows the score. wonder if he'll let me hold him up. A little bit lively, this one. There we go. Nice chunky fish. Not going to keep him out too long, put him back. So we also shallowed the rig up then, and it worked really well because it sort of nailed it straight away. We didn't miss any bites, so slightly shallow is the way to go today. Another 6mm on. So we've not been feeding the peg much, so I'm not in any rush to get out there. Just going to feed the peg about 6 or so 6mm pellets. Not in any rush, just trying to get the fish back again, competing. Still see the odd fish cruising around. But if they weren't sort of responding to the feed so well, I definitely would fish with a longer length of line above the pole float. Just allows me to target those cruising fish as well as flicking the rig into my feed. So I'm not going to slap it this time, I'm just going to lay it in gently and try not to spook any fish. There was a fish there, just about make it out. Keep the loose feed going in as well. It's important to try and loose feed short of the pole tip. That way the fish aren't sort of out of range where you can't catch them. Still see the odd fish there. Just try slapping it, making a bit of a noise. Keep working the rig. Little bits of bait going in, get them competing. There we go, there's another one. You know where the snags are. Straight towards it. Ooh. There we go, he's coming out. Angry fish. It's mental, isn't it? Big uns know exactly where the snags are. There we go, he's under control now. I hope. Sun's starting to come out now. There's definitely a lot more fish cruising around. Nice big mirror carp, that one. Concentrate on getting it in this time. Seems to have given up now. Just going to keep it nice and low, let the fish come towards us. Thing is, when you've got your top kit high all the time, they tend to pull against you, so they stay deep. But if you can just pull it sideways and then lift at the last minute, you can get these fish under control. That's an even bigger one this time. Probably won't let me hold him up, but we'll see. There we go, fully scaled mirror, beautiful fish. So because the sun is starting to come out, I'm going to put this rig down and just show you the other rig, because it just lets me target these cruising fish a little bit better when you've got a longer length of line, and also it's less likely to spook the fish when you've got that longer length of line. Just going to pick a longer rig up. So I've got a 4x12 on this time. Just going to shallow it up again because we were catching quite shallow, so we'll go about 14-15 inches. Got that longer length of line, and I've got a 6mm pellet on again. So instead of targeting those fish in amongst the loose feed, we're going to have a little look around, see if there's any cruising fish. I'm still going to loose feed the peg and keep that going. It gives me the option of fishing in my feed and also beyond it, and you know, if there's a fish close in, I can target that as well. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled. This time I'm swinging the rig out beyond the pole tip. I'm not slapping with this rig. Just flicking it out there. The wind's starting to get up now, it's a little bit awkward, but it's not too bad. Keep the loose feed going in. Keep flicking that pellet out beyond the pole tip. Obviously you'll find that there are the odd bigger fish that do hang back and don't come right in amongst the loose feed. I can also see a fish there, so I'm going to try laying the rig in front of that one, see if he has it. Oh, he nearly went for it. Don't think he could find that one. I'll try again. There's still one or two there. Try and keep a tight line between the pole tip and the float. I think there was a ghostie there. No, keep the feed going in. Keep laying the rig in. Some ghosties out beyond the pole tip there, you can see. Keep feeding. I think because we caught a few fish really quickly, they're a little bit spooky, but there's one there. See if he has it. I thought about it. Definitely warming up now, so fish ought to be sort of cruising around a little bit more. In fact, I can see one really close in there. Let's try and target that one. Lay the rig a few feet in front of it. He's missed it. Worth a shot. Carry on loose feeding the swim. See a fish out beyond the pole tip there. Just a little bit further than where I was feeding. So when you're laying a rig in with a long length of line, it's important to try and keep that tight line. So when you do get a bite, you're less likely to miss it. It's all about controlling a rig when you've got that long length of line. Oh, you can see the odd fish there. There we go. You had that as soon as it hit the water. That's why it's important to keep laying the rig in, even if you're not sure if there's any fish there. One can take you by surprise. So, just shows how it's important to keep switching between the rigs. So you caught a few fish straight away, but then they went a little bit cagey, and that longer length of line seems to be helping now. It's less likely to spook from the pole tip, but it also lets us target these cruising fish. Picked up some weed there. So on the really warm days, sometimes they don't sort of come into the feed as confidently as they are today. Sometimes, you know, you might not catch like this until the last hour, or maybe they have a good first hour, and that's when you can target the cruising fish in between, when it's a little bit more difficult. Obviously, if you're trying to target a fish away from your loose feed, then you know, it's just after that small little meal, it's only taking that one pellet. On the days that perhaps they don't want to come into the loose feed and feed on loads of bait. So a few different sort of ways of fishing, but we're still sort of feeding the peg and trying to catch them in a way that they're competing and sort of coming to the feed. But also if they don't sort of fancy that, we're targeting the sort of fish that are cruising around. So I'm looking around, see if I can see any cruising fish. But at the same time, we're feeding the peg. And then you've got sort of the potential to catch really well in that loose feed, but also you can catch the odd bigger fish. There's one off to the left there, see if we can target that one. Nice and gentle swing in front of the fish. Not sure where it went. Maybe it's following the pellet down. Give it a few seconds. Not sure where it went. No, we'll go back to our original spot where we've been feeding. So lay the rig in. Oh, there we go. Right where we've been loose feeding. So might be that this is sort of the smaller fish that's coming to the loose feed, and the two fish that we caught before were bigger fish that were sort of a little bit more wary about coming into the loose feed. They fight really hard, these small little fish. When they're sort of 2-3 pound, they fight really hard. So take the time with it. It's another ghosty to finish on. Fully scaled one as well, fully scaled ghosty. I think that might be a nice little fish to finish on. Beautiful fish. So hopefully you've picked up a few tips about shallow fishing. One of my favourite ways of fishing, when you're catching fully scaled ghost carp like that. What more could you want in a fish? That's a beautiful fish. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.